At the age of 36, I have everything, except marriage. I was born in London in 1866, a real aristocratic lady. In that era, the fate of women was to get married, have children, and become the family angel behind their husbands. You must bring a maid with you when you go out, not for safety, but for reputation. I didn't even have the opportunity to go to school. My classroom was the living room, and I hired a tutor to teach me. My mother was extremely strict with me since I was a child. She repeatedly instilled only one truth: women can only live on men. And the gifts my father gave me were never books or painting tools, but scissors, needles and thread, and laundry baskets, as if I was born to do housework. But I am not that kind of girl. I have been obsessed with nature and small animals since I was a child. Every summer, the whole family would go to the Lake District to escape the heat. My mother didn't allow me to play with those dirty farm children for fear that I would be led astray. But I just liked to chase rabbits in the dirt. Even if I was covered in mud, I was willing to get close to those real lives. My mother asked me, "Who would marry a girl like you?" I blurted out,
"Well, I shan't marry, so it doesn't matter."
Of course you shall marry.
I shan't. I shall draw.
Then who will love you?
My art and my animals. I won't need more love.
But who knew that I really stayed like this and stayed single until I was 36 years old? I ran around with my maid every day, met publishers, and went to printing factories. I didn't look like an unmarried noble lady at all. And I just wanted to publish my own picture book, even if it sounded like a fantasy at the time. My stories about rabbits and ducks, like me as a woman, were not taken seriously. I was rejected by 6 publishers. I thought this might be the end. Unexpectedly, the 2 brothers from Vaughan Publishing House agreed, although they also said that the book would only make a small profit and would not sell well. I was ecstatic.
I shall do everything possible to ensure that you've not made a mistake.
The next day, the publishing house came to discuss the details. I thought it would be one of the brothers, but the one standing at the door turned out to be a young man I had never seen before. He was Norman. He had just joined the company and had no experience. I immediately understood that they just wanted to give the youngest brother Norman a chance and find an excuse to refuse him to stay in the publishing house. I wanted to refuse. But Norman was surprisingly serious. He not only listened carefully to my requirements for printing specifications, but also agreed with my design concept. I hope to reduce the cost as much as possible and change to black and white printing, so that even children from poor families can afford it. And he not only understood me, but also proposed new ideas, and he insisted on keeping the color illustrations. For this reason, he proposed to use 3-color printing technology to reduce the number of illustrations and print them on one page. This way, both the color is retained and the cost is saved. I was really moved at the time, not only because of his brain, but also because he respected my creation. So, the 2 of us unfavored people hit it off. We started to select illustrations together, went to the printing factory to adjust the colors, and proofread the samples one by one just to make the pictures present the most perfect state. The satisfaction we felt on the day when the sample book was printed was really beyond words. Norman's sister, Millie, also liked my work very much. She is one of the most open-minded women I have ever met, and like me, she is not married. In this way, I made my first friend other than animals. The recognition given by the Norman family was something I had never received in my own family. When my mother learned that the book I wrote was about to be published, she not only did not congratulate me, but was very cold.
That book. I can hardly wait till it's finished and forgotten.
But I didn't care. That day, Norman suddenly visited me and took me to a place. I thought it was just a normal store visit, but I didn't expect that. On the stand in the center of the bookstore, The Tale of Peter Rabbit was prominently displayed. A rough calculation shows that 1,920 copies can be sold in a year.
That's just in one shop.
I was very excited, but after the joy, a sense of loss rose in my heart. The book has been published. Does that mean that the cooperation with Norman has ended? Norman seemed to notice my emotions. He touched my hand gently and said,
I had hoped that you might have other stories. You have been very important in my life.
And you and mine, Mr. Warren.
And you must do it again and again.
I still want to continue the cooperation. I never thought that one day the little animals I painted would really run into the dreams of thousands of children. I often go to art exhibitions with Millie. Gradually, it made me realize that women who don't get married can also live so freely.
No houses, no babies, no husbands demanding things all the time. As long as one's lucky enough in life to have a good friend.
On Christmas Eve, I invited Millie and Norman to my house for a party. Of course, my mother objected. She always believed that Christmas dinners can only entertain duchesses and upper-class celebrities. How could a publisher spoil the fun? But my father was surprisingly firm. He just went to the bookstore and bought my book. He said that almost every friend in the club bought it, and everyone had more than one copy. He looked at me. His tone was softer than ever before.
You're not a little girl anymore. You're an artist.
I knew that he remembered the regret that he was forced to give up painting when he was young. He said that I had accomplished what he had not done. At that moment, my heart was gently touched. Since I was a child, I have longed for my father's affirmation, and now I finally waited for that belated recognition. The party began as usual, with boring greetings and stereotyped jokes. But because of the appearance of Millie and Norman, this Christmas Eve unexpectedly became warm. After dinner, I secretly took Norman to see my studio. Apart from my family, he was the first man to step into my secret space. When we danced to the music, he actually looked at me and proposed to me.
I know you have decided not to marry. I would like you to consider.
Before I could speak, my mother happened to come in. The atmosphere was broken. I hurried to Millie to confide. Didn't I agree with her not to get married together? But at this moment, I wanted to agree to him.
I'd like your approval.
Don't be a fool. Marry him.
How could you hesitate? You're not upset. Well, why would I be upset?
You have a chance for happiness and you're worrying about me.
It turns out that we said we didn't want to get married, not to fight the world, but because the right person hadn't appeared yet. At the end of the party, I handed the Christmas gift to Norman in person. Before he could react, I whispered,
Yes.
Our eyes were red. No matter how old you are, love always makes your heart beat faster. However, the good times didn't last long. When Norman came to propose marriage, the conversation with my father lasted only 5 minutes before he was rejected. Of course, my mother was even more fiercely opposed. She said I couldn't marry a businessman. Under my rebuttal, they actually said that if I wanted to marry him, they would deprive me of my inheritance rights.
Happily, I'm a published author. I have means of my own. This discussion is over.
I went to the bank alone in a rage. I wanted to know if my royalties were enough to support me to buy a house in the country.
You have enough to buy an estate. You're quite a wealthy woman, Miss Potter.
The results surprised me. My assets have long exceeded expectations. If they continue to grow in the future, I will never have to worry about food and clothing for the rest of my life. My parents had no choice but to give me a compromise. If I went to the Lake District with them this summer, like in previous years, and separated from Norman for a few months, and our love remained the same, they would agree to the marriage. I accepted it without hesitation. I trusted Norman, and I trusted our love even more.
But make plans. There will be a wedding in this house by October.
He was also not afraid of the test of time, and solemnly handed me an engagement ring. In a private space unknown to anyone, the two of us completed an engagement ceremony that belonged only to us. In the days that followed, I continued to paint as usual, and Norman remained the most enthusiastic reader and the most sincere supporter. Not only a lover, but also a soulmate. We both became more comfortable and more confident in our respective fields. Finally, the day of departure for the Lake District arrived. I reluctantly got on the carriage and kept looking out the window all the way. Every person who passed by, I thought it was Norman. I even chased off the carriage, but I recognized the wrong person again and again. I turned around in despair, but he really came. We ran towards each other, and he thoughtfully brought me a sample of his new book so that I could read books during the journey. This was our longest separation, but I was not afraid at all, because I knew that our hearts were always together. At the moment of parting, on the steam-covered platform, we hugged each other tightly and kissed goodbye. This deep affection was enough to go through the whole summer. During the days in the Lake District, we kept communicating, and those letters became my most precious spiritual sustenance. I found that I liked the way I was now more and more, not only because of the tranquility of nature, but also because Norman lived in my heart. However, one day I suddenly didn't receive his letter. I began to worry and speculate, and the uneasiness entangled me like a vine. I finally waited for a letter from Millie, which I thought was a letter from him, but it turned out to be like being struck by lightning. Norman was sick, so I immediately packed my luggage and rushed back to London. The moment I arrived at his house and saw his brother's face, I knew it was too late. I cried and hugged Millie. Norman had passed away. The funeral was yesterday, and I didn't even get to see him for the last time. I don't remember how I got home. I only remember that I locked myself in the studio and let sadness swallow everything. I didn't eat, drink, or talk, and the little animals left me. It seemed that the whole world had sunk into darkness, and my heart had died with him. Millie came to see me. She knocked again and again, and finally came in. She said that we all have to face this reality. It turns out that facing loss requires more courage than escaping.
I've been torturing myself. I should never have encouraged you with Norman. I loved him. I loved him too, but he's gone.
I began to pick up the brush again and sort out the life on the farm bit by bit in silence. The grass, the soil, the sheep, the bird song in the morning. Nature seemed to have never betrayed me and quietly healed me. I used to think that love and freedom always have to sacrifice one. Now I understand that true freedom is to have the courage to love and the confidence to stick to yourself. Independence does not mean not needing anyone, but being able to live out hope after losing. May my story remind you, you don't have to be anyone's ideal. You just need to be true to your heart and live as your truest self. That is the greatest courage.